Hi, I'm Vanita, and this is my podcast, Laid Off to Lift Off. The goal is to provide real layoff stories from all walks of life, hear about the day it happened, where they are now, and inspiring advice to help you through your own journey. Whether you've been there, are in it now, or think it's coming, I want you to know that you're not alone. Today on Laid Off to Lift Off, I'm so excited to have Jason Muth, real estate investor, girl dad, corporate America survivor, host of Smart Stay Show podcast, and an Airbnb superhost more than 30 times over. Jason and his husband took what started as a side hustle and turned into a full-time passion, creating amazing short-term rentals and experiences across Massachusetts and New Hampshire. After years in the corporate world, Jason made the leap to hosting full-time and hasn't looked back. Thank you for being here, Jason. Welcome.
Thank you, Vanita. Thanks for having me. What an intro.
I tell you, AI helped me. Anyway, I want to start, like this podcast always starts, telling me your layoff story, the day that it happened, and your feelings and what you did next.
Yeah. So it happened in 2022, leading into July 4th weekend. I had two previous layoffs back when the economy was bad, back in like 2008, 2009.
Okay.
Both those situations, the companies went under shortly thereafter. So, whatever, you just kind of move on. And there was a lot going on back then. But this most recent one was a good 13 years later. And I'd worked 13 years as a digital sales manager and digital sales director for local media companies here in the greater Boston area.
Mm-hmm.
I spent 6.5 years working with Comcast, so NBC Universal. And I left that job to go work for my most recent W-2 employer, which was a local radio company here in the area. And I was there for 6.5 years as well. So it was a good 13-year run between those two, and that kind of in a very similar role. That day, I dropped my daughter off at daycare down the street from where I'm sitting right now in Newburyport, Massachusetts. When I got back in the car, I got a phone call from the director of sales, passed me on to the HR director. They mentioned that the position was being eliminated. I said, okay. They said that they were going to send over some paperwork later on. And I said, okay, I'll have a look at it. That was it.
Were you surprised?
So the media business, as you know, because you
Yeah.
work in it also, it's a very tough world, especially on the radio side. They have cuts multiple times a year. Every company does it. And it's no secret. It's well published that it's a shrinking industry.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not surprised that eventually our number came up. My role was in the top market that this company had at the time. We were the top performer also. So talk about like a top performer in the top market exceeding revenue goals, and they still eliminated my role. I think that was a test to see if they could eliminate the role in the other markets as well, which they ended up doing in the ensuing months and years. So I was a little surprised it happened when it did, but to be perfectly honest, I was engineering this and I was hoping to get laid off later on that same year in the fall.
Okay.
We had moved to Newburyport and the office was moving to somewhere northwest of Boston. The commute was going to be a bear. And it was still hybrid at the time, but they were asking people to go in more frequently. And I knew I was not going to want to do that drive.
So you knew changes were coming. So you were prepping.
But I wanted it to be in my control. I was going to make myself available for a future layoff once I realized I didn't want to have to do that drive. But they just beat me to it and instead gave me a great summer with severance where I can get started with my next chapter sooner than my time frame was. So, it worked out fine.
Was that feeling any different than your first?
Yeah, I felt a lot more secure because I was older. The other two times, the first time it ever happened, I was probably around your age and I'd never not had a job before. I didn't know what that feeling was like. Like I was always in these positions where the jobs came to me. I attracted them. I had worked for a company for over 9 years. I worked my way up. I was on the research team, so I traveled the country and did focus groups for audience research and loved it, but it got to be a grind and I wanted to have more of a life here. So I left that job on my own for a local company, and that company ended up, it was a private equity purchase of that company. And then a couple of years into it, they were just so over leveraged and they grew too fast as private equity does. and the whole thing collapsed. So, they let us go and the company was under within weeks. I was surprised. That was a surprise because that had never happened to me before. So then you go down the list of financially, how am I going to make it work? Like now I have to go look for a job.
It sends you in
And
like a panic and like
yeah,
anxiety ridden.
it was more, I mean, I ended up going to Hawaii when that
Okay.
happened. I think I did 2 trips to Hawaii in about a week, like in about a year with a friend of mine. Then I ended up getting a job at an ad agency, but I was only there for a couple months because shortly after I got that job, they lost their major account that was like 2/3 of their revenue. So like the writing was on the wall there. When I was let go from that company, the company was literally went from 120 people to zero within
Wow.
a few months afterward. So to me, none of that was my fault, right? And there's nothing you could do when the
Yeah.
company was failing. Eventually, everybody was going to be underwater. And when that second one happened, I was like, okay, I really need to go get like something a little bit more stable. I found my way to another digital marketing company here in the greater Boston area. And I got recruited away from that company to Comcast. Right. So it's like I was kind of back on that wheel of, all right, people are now looking for me. They're looking
Right.
for that role. And they grabbed me out of this other temporary company for a 6.5 year run that I left for another 6.5 year run. Right.
Yeah.
So, like in my mind, that 13-year run was, again, me being recruited for these jobs because when I left Comcast, I was recruited into this other company. Then, when that role ended, I already knew what I was going to do next. We already had planted the seeds with the short term rental world that we're in right now. We were purchasing real estate income properties as early as 2016. So, we already had been doing Airbnb and learning that, but we were weekend warriors, right? Like this wasn't, it was professional, but not really.
Yeah.
Right.
What
And then
what got you into that short-term rental business?
so I had a little bit extra money to invest where we purchased a vacation home down the street from where my in-laws have now since retired. It
Nice.
was their summer home. And we just knew we were going to be up at that lake frequently if we were going to have kids. And we now have a 6-year-old daughter. We realized that we weren't going to be able to stay at their place when we went to visit. We lived in Boston at the time. There was a house for sale down the street. The price was good. The rates were great at the time. It was sitting on the market for a while. We made an offer. We got it. We said, let's Airbnb this. At the time, Airbnb was relatively new. It wasn't as
Right.
big as it was now. So
Yep.
we said, I've heard of this platform that you could rent it out. And it just became my side identity. Like we really were into real estate investing. My husband is a real estate attorney and a real estate broker. It became a common interest of ours. I was always doing it on the side.
Hmm.
And then I liked it so much that we bought a second income property in Provincetown, Massachusetts. And I was now doing the two. COVID hit. It was a strange year because like
Yeah.
all the bookings got taken off the calendar, and then suddenly everything rebooked like crazy because everyone was doing staycations. If you remember
Yep.
2021, was driving all over the place, couldn't travel, couldn't fly, couldn't
I
go out
think
of the
I went to New
country.
Hampshire in 2021,
Yeah.
actually.
So the bookings were fantastic in 2021. It just went off the charts. And I was like, I like this. Like maybe this is going to be the next chapter whenever this media role
Yeah.
ends. I just rode the media job out for as long as they had me. My product was doing great. Again, we were the top market, with the top level of billing.
Hmm.
But even as the top performer, you're vulnerable, right? You're
Hmm.
vulnerable in a lot of ways. Like you're vulnerable if you're making too much money in their mind. You're vulnerable if the company is failing.
Yep.
You're vulnerable if the industry is failing. All those things are true with that company. And you're
Hmm.
vulnerable if you're on the older side. I mean, I am proudly Gen X. I just read this great article on the New York Times linked to today about Generation X and like how great we are as a generation. We just don't tell people about it, frankly. I know you're a millennial, but we're a vulnerable generation, like
Yeah.
in the corporate world right now. Like, we're late 40s, early 50s, mid 50s.
Hmm.
People are not yet set with retirement and our jobs are getting eliminated. It's a shame. It's happening to a lot of Gen X people now.
Yeah. And, that generation also has been in the workforce where climbing the corporate ladder was very much a thing. And it was like stable to some extent. There wasn't a lot of side hustles happening throughout your time. But now a lot of people are doing side hustles.
Yeah.
And you started off as having the Airbnb as a side hustle.
Part of me thinks it's that we were lucky that we did that, but I'm a big superstitious person. I'm big into luck, but I'm
Hmm.
also big into putting myself into lots of situations where luck can reward me. So that's what we did. Like we put ourselves into situations where we purchased these income properties. We took a risk with our money. The market could have failed. It could have gone down. Instead, it worked out fantastically. In fact, the day of the layoff in 2022, the most recent one, the only thing I was concerned about, to be perfectly honest, was the fact that I couldn't close on a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, on one of our vacation properties because I was so far down the road with applying for that HELOC, and it was going to unlock about $250,000 worth of equity that we were going to reinvest somewhere else. I was about to sign, but you have to, on those final papers that you sign at the closing table, you have to say on an affidavit that you're still employed. You could
Ah,
verify employment, everything.
okay.
I'm not going to lie, I couldn't do that. So that was the only thing I frankly cared about, that
Okay.
and recasting myself into this new world. But I literally came home, I told Rory, I'm like, they just eliminated a position. I'm like, he's like, oh. I'm like, the HELOC. Those were literally the next words out of my mouth in the same room I'm recording this right now, which goes to show you how done I was,
Yeah,
with
yeah, for
that
sure.
role.
That's funny. So, going to your next chapter in your life, fully going in on short-term rentals, talk me through that and how that started. Did you have any concerns? Or did you ever think about going back to corporate at all? I know in your bio it says corporate America survivor, but would you ever go back to corporate America?
Not in the slightest. Never. Never.
Good.
I mean, I said to myself from that day, I said I'm going to give myself 18 months
Hmm.
to rebrand myself to what I've become and see if it's going to be successful. I'm not sure exactly where I'm headed, but I know I want to be in this space.
Yeah.
So shortly thereafter, I signed up to go to a conference that I always wanted to go to, that Bigger Pockets sponsors, which is a big real estate investing community. It was in San Diego that year.
Hmm.
I went to a local real estate meetup, which I've been to many, many times prior. A person speaking was a short-term rental operator, and I went up to him afterward. I'm like, I need more people like you in my life. I need to talk to more short-term rental people because I was doing it all on my own. I didn't know that there
Yeah.
was a world out there of people that you can commiserate over. And he pointed me toward a retreat that was happening in Miami. So immediately I signed up for that. And then separately, I started following content online by a guy named Mike Sodrin, who's in the
Mm.
area here. He has a mastermind called Short Term Rental Secrets. I decided to apply and they onboarded me, and I, decided to pay for the mastermind and said the worst thing that's going to happen is I lose some money,
Right.
but maybe I'll take this risk and meet some people and learn some new systems. And I'm still in that mastermind to this day. I still pay my annual expensive fee because the networking, the systems are the best out there. I love the people I've met, and it completely rebranded me, like 100%. The podcast also helped, but having Smart Stay Show, this, as of right now, we're close to 300 episodes of that podcast, where it's really changed who I am, right? I think part of it initially was to prove to the world I came from that I didn't need them anymore. Identity is so vital when you're laid off, what you're going to
Yeah.
do next. I already knew I was not going to work in the industry anymore. As much as I loved it, it doesn't love you back. I had to move on. I think that in the back of my mind, I was very specific in letting all them know, whoever cared and whoever listened, that I'm done. It's just not
Yeah.
what it was.
Right.
But I've heard from so many former colleagues that you could tell are looking to do something else because they're stuck in that cycle where they know that the number is going to come up at some point. The other telling thing, which I'm sure a lot of people that have been laid off can attest to, is the people who you don't hear from
Mm.
after the layoff. That was shocking to me. It was very surprising.
The people you thought would reach out don't,
Mhm.
and it's very surprising. I had so many emotions after my layoff. That was like another shock to the system. Like, dang, I thought we were friends, or I thought we were closer than that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's just business. And you have to have a thick skin, and it's hard because
Mhm.
you just came from this world where you talk to these people on a daily basis and then you literally never hear from some of them
Yeah.
ever again, including hiring managers. This is really, really strange. But
Yeah.
hey, you move on. I'm happy that it happened, but like leaps and bounds better right now, like making more money than I ever have more credibility in this space than I could have ever imagined. Our investments are doing really well, and we're running a business that we didn't know we'd be running when
Yeah.
the layoff happened. The business is serving Provincetown, Massachusetts. It's called Pride Away Stays. I thought about the concept like just it came to me. I'm like, I need to serve these people in P-Town that aren't doing short-term rentals the right way and help the owners out who have second homes who aren't optimizing them. They're not maximizing how much money they could bring in for these properties and help pay their bills.
Yeah.
I said, I can do this. The only
Yeah.
reason I didn't want to do it was because I just came from a very high intensive sales world where I didn't want to have clients,
You
frankly.
wanted a mental break
I
of the
did.
sales world a little
But,
bit.
but after a year and a half away, I said, you know what? I can do this. Like, I know how to interact with people. I'm very honest. I'm smart. I'm good at what I'm doing right now. I think that I could speak to people as a local owner in Provincetown, as someone in the LGBTQ plus community, and as somebody that understands short-term rentals on a very high
Yeah.
level. So we launched the business. We did some smart marketing that was very targeted. And we're sitting here with 27 clients 2 years
Amazing.
later. Yeah.
Amazing. How many properties do you have as your short-term rentals?
So between what we own and what we're currently managing, it would be 31. So,
That's a lot.
the management, we don't own those, right? So
Okay.
the other people own them. We take our fee based on how much we book the properties, but then we deal with all the guest communication, all the cleaners, all the handyman
Yeah.
stuff. So we're the ones that are really the liaison between the stuff that happens at the property and the owner. They're usually busy professionals who are working in New York or Boston or Fort
Right.
Lauderdale or a big metropolitan area where they just don't have time or the skill to manage the guests, but they need the income
Right.
to pay the mortgage and the taxes on the property because Provincetown is incredibly expensive.
Yeah, and we talked about this too a little bit just on the topic of podcasting. People don't see behind the scenes of it all, and they think it's easy. You own properties, you're getting all this money, but it's just so much on the back end that people don't see, and the
Yeah.
hardships that goes along with it because it's not easy at
A,
all.
a lot of it is, what they say with, an electrician or a plumber, like, you pay $5 for the part, but $200 for the expertise as to how to apply the part, right? So we built some really excellent systems in our short-term rental space, and we have a really good network of people in Provincetown.
Yeah, I mean, I go to Airbnbs all the time, and I think it's the owner doing it all, but I never even thought about this other world of people doing it for you.
Yeah, often it is. I mean, like we are the owners in New Hampshire and the one
Mhm.
place in Provincetown, like so those we were the ones doing it all. And there's a lot of independent owners out there,
Yeah.
but there's also national companies that you could book properties through that the
Hmm.
owners will then sign up with and the company takes a fee, or there's local companies like ours. I mean, the only market we serve is Provincetown, just one zip code. So, we're not this big national monolithic company
Yeah.
where we have hundreds of zip codes that we serve, just that one.
I was taking a look at your website before, and I'm in New York, so it's easy to get to New Hampshire and those other
Yeah.
areas. So you never know, Jason might be reaching out to you.
Yeah, I mean, New Hampshire, we host lots of multi-generational families. Like our
Yeah.
customer there is people that are traveling with their parents, with their kids,
Yep.
and they need more space than a hotel can offer.
All right. Cool. Cool. So with that said, what I the third part of this podcast is always advice. So what advice would you have to listeners who are experiencing a layoff, have experienced a layoff, think it's coming? What advice would you give them?
So it's easier said than done, but start your next chapter while you're currently working. If you've already been laid off, it's a little too late for that. If you could start your side hustle or your side passion and do it while you're working for your current employer, and obviously give your current employer the full attention that they command because they're paying you,
Right.
but start that side hustle, start that side business while you're currently working and start to change that identity. Change who you are in your head and in your heart. I knew I wasn't going to be working in that industry anymore. So I literally just said goodbye, shut the door, and moved on.
Mm-hmm.
That's another great piece of advice. The only thing that was the hard thing for me to give up was that it was not my decision,
Yeah.
right? I wanted it to be my decision because in my head, I engineered the whole thing. I was going to offer myself up. It doesn't always work that way.
Right.
I had to be at peace at that. It's hard for a lot of people when they realize they didn't see it coming. They didn't
Yeah.
get to have that closure. So people that want to stay in that industry, don't burn any bridges. right? I'm 51. I'm certainly employable. Like I'm supposed to work for 15 more years, according to our government. So I'm doing it by myself, right?
Yeah.
I'm an entrepreneur and bringing my own money in. I think that changing who you think you are, if indeed you're making a pivot and making that shift very quickly and getting around other people that are already doing that thing and
Mhm.
building your new network in this new space, if indeed you are making a complete career change, that's important. You
Yeah.
got to do that immediately.
Yeah, it's that was a good advice to start planning early, because even as you were talking about going to the conferences and getting into the class that you're doing,
Mastermind.
mastermind class, those things cost money.
Mm-hmm.
And even when you're laid off and you want to like upskill yourself, or even get a LinkedIn premium account, those things cost money. So to have like a bank account or something for like personal development, I would say is good advice for like start doing those types of planning early, because it does take money to do what you're passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely. It was expensive. The mastermind is not cheap. And being an entrepreneur, you have to worry about your own health insurance and all that stuff. It's expensive stuff.
Yeah.
I had a little bit of a runway with unemployment and
Yeah.
severance, but we already had income coming in from
Right.
our short-term rentals. So we were okay because we set ourselves up to be okay if that were to happen. I realize not everyone has that same
Yes.
luxury, but since we did have that luxury, I was willing to part with money that I might have needed down the line to rebrand myself.
Yeah.
So if you're listening to this and you were laid off, but you do have some money saved up, try not to be as stingy with that
Mm.
money. Like if you put it out there in the right spot, then it might come back to you in multiples, which is what's happened to me.
I think that's great advice. Is there anything else you want to share before we end?
It's funny having this discussion because it brings up all the memories of,
Yes.
that day a couple of years ago. I can't say that I think about it that much anymore. I've moved on. I'm in the next phase. I'm so far down the road in the next
Hmm.
phase that I'm happy. I don't dwell over a layoff that happened a couple of years ago, but some people do. I see posts on LinkedIn, I see posts on Facebook from people that have been laid off over a year ago. You try to help them if you could point them in the right direction. It's a tough space, and people my generation, like, just get ready for the layoff. If it hasn't happened yet, it will.
That lines up perfectly with the purpose of this podcast, is to provide different stories from all different walks of life and all different types of people, and giving people hope that there is light at the end of the tunnel. It may seem very dark in some cases right now, depending on your situation, but with the right moves, with the right networking, with the right, belief and hope to guide you, it can get better because it has happened to other people. And why can't it happen to you?
Right, right.
So, with that, thank you, Jason, for being on this podcast. It was a pleasure meeting you and talking to you. And go check out his podcast if you want to name drop.
Yep, Smart Stay Show. If you're into the short-term rental space, we have great guests from small hosts to big hosts to people that are CEOs of tech companies that serve our industry. If you are traveling to Provincetown, you can go to prideawaystays.com and you can book one of our properties directly and save money from Airbnb and Vrbo fees.
Perfect.